Hey there, fellow minions of technology. My name is Tim Lee, and welcome to Legacy Studio. Now, in this video, I want to talk about a topic that, honestly, I don't want to talk about. How do I put this? Long story short, I spent a lot of money on this guy. This is the i1Studio, retails for almost 500 bucks. The theory behind this guy is that it can calibrate all of your screens as well as your printer and allow you to be able to get a very close image of what you have on your computer in comparison to what you get on your printer. Obviously, there's a lot of catches to this, but I obviously took the bait and I hit the buy now button. Thankfully, I got it during a sale, but even during that sale, it was still over $300+, and I was really hoping I was investing in my business by buying this little guy. But after messing with it for about 3 weeks, I still have no idea. Now, let me just preface this by saying I've worked in the world of design for many, many years. Before I moved here to Montana, I worked as a graphic designer, head graphic designer at Shadow Graphics in Orlando. We were doing vehicle wraps and designs for all kinds of different companies, big names and theme parks that you absolutely know, taxi firms, everything that is just under the sun amazing that I got to design. I was printing on printers that frankly would not fit in this room, dealing with color matching and many other things that required a lot of pinpoint accuracy when it came to color and other things of that nature. So now being here in Great Falls, so obviously when it comes down to it, my experience with this is not exactly limited. So when you get this in the mail, it comes in a very nice package. It comes in a nice little kit where you can have a little case that will mount it to your screen. It's a weighted case so it can lay over your monitors and you can easily scan your monitors using that. The little case even has a little protective latch on the bottom here to make sure that it protects the sensor inside this device. But the scanner is incredibly light, as most units have been that have been in this industry. When I worked at Shadow Graphics, I had the little brother to this guy, and so I felt pretty good about the idea of buying something of this nature that was better than the one that I had when I worked in the industry, hoping that maybe my quality of my product would go up here in my studio at home. But in the end, I gotta admit, my final opinion coming down to this so far is that this is really finicky. And it truly does depend on if you bought a cheap monitor or a monitor that's meant to be calibrated to proper colors. I guess the same would even go for the printer that you purchase. But then on top of that, when you're actually utilizing settings to try and print the same thing that you calibrated, the printer settings are just as finicky. So in the end, truth be told, it might not even come down to this thing's fault. In the end, it might actually just come down to the complete user experience. Not even just this, but all-encompassing using the printers or whatever you're doing, whatever software you're going through. Because truth be told, when you're printing in Photoshop, you can print in one format. But when you print out of Lightroom, you're printing out of another option. Or when you print out of Serif software, it's different. Or Luminar software. I mean, there's really no balance. You can't find a central point. And I guess in the end, that's one of the benefits of using a RIP software when you're doing big prints on ginormous printers. And I know for many of you, you will probably not know what a RIP software is, and it's not a muscular software. Lame attempt at a joke. But it is a software that does communicate with your printer to help it better equal the quality of what you were expecting from it. Regular softwares, regular printers, they really don't have that kind of a user interface and a system to try and equalize everything to that extent. One thing that I do like about this is that I've been able to use this not only on my computer and on my laptop, but also on my father-in-law's computer because the software registers to the device itself. I don't have to have a serial number that I have to pull up every time that I decide to utilize this on a different software. And there's also not exactly licenses involved because technically this device plugged in is your license. I'd say it's a lot like a music software having a USB key as the way to unlock using that software. And all in all, the user interface of the software really isn't that bad either from i1Studio. I guess it would also be known as X-Rite because that's the company that makes the i1Studio. So let me give you a quick idea of how this works. I'll plug this into my computer and let's go ahead and switch over to our computer mode. And here in the middle of my 600 icons, I have one here called i1Studio. As you can see, the user interface is super simple. You select which device you're using. And technically, if I knew that you could use the Color Monkey version, which is the cheaper version of this, to do the same scans and do the same profiles on your printer as well as on your computer, I wouldn't have spent this much money for this one. But in all the documentation I found, this was the only one that guaranteed that it would scan both screens and the printer and equalize them. What their difference is, I don't know, but as you can see, you select the same function on this for both options and then click on display if you're going to do a display. So now in all the tons of videos I watched from f-stoppers, from a bunch of other YouTubers like myself and all of that stuff, I had to actually learn how to do this myself. The f-stoppers video did technically help a little bit, but in the end, I still had to kind of learn this for myself. So let me give you some advice, some fatherly advice in this. The things that I've learned are you want to do a custom setting, not photo or video. Don't worry about that. Do a custom setting. According to sources, which are millions, they do say use the Illuminant D65 because it's an industry standard. Industry standard. And then when it comes to how bright you want your screen to be, you'll want to choose that from this luminance box. Now apparently industry standard, once again, is like 60 to 80, whatever this CD-M squared thing is. But the screen is so dark in that setting, it feels unnatural. We're so used to having our screens turned way up. I personally turn the backlight up on my screens as much as humanly possible. So telling it that I want it to be 60 to 80 for the most reliable look in comparison to my prints, I don't want it to look like a not lit piece of paper, which is technically what it kind of does. So I found in my personal settings that I wanted to do somewhere around 120 or 140, give or take. But the other problem is if your screen cannot get to that level, if it can't get that bright, say for instance my Wacom, which is really an old screen, then you're in trouble. Because even though this system says it will do automatic settings for you and automatically change the features that you want to have changed, I didn't find it to work as well as it did when I customized those settings myself in all of my screens. So needless to say, like I said, it's very fidgety. It takes a bit to figure this out, and you have to experience it for yourself to really understand, just to make any sense of this. So I think I selected something like 140 CD-M squared, whatever that means. And then I went on and I selected my screen here. You got to make sure you select your screen here. It will take this software and it will put it in the screen that you select. And then once you've selected it, then you hit next. Then you basically follow the directions. But once again, it's fidgety. So on this thing here, you got to make sure you turn the knobby thing, which isn't the easiest thing to do, to turn it. And once you do it, it tells the system that it's turned, and now I can calibrate the device. So I can press the button, and it will calibrate it. That's fine. I actually like that. The simplicity of that is great. But the problem is, when you're calibrating said device, the next thing, once it's calibrated, you have to select either automatic display control or RGB brightness and all that stuff manually. When I told it to do it automatically, it didn't do so good. When I told it I would do it, I'm literally fidgeting with the settings on my monitor, going into the settings and having to adjust each one. Allow me to demonstrate. So first I'm going to turn this back so that I can see the sensor in here, and then I'm going to lay this on my screen here, like in the middle of the screen. And I can't show you my whole screen for other reasons, but I put it on the screen. You got to kind of make sure it sits flat on the screen, which can take a bit of fidgetiness because you really do want it to sit pretty flat on the screen. So if your screen's leaning forward, you're in trouble. Now once it's on the screen, then you go ahead and you click on Start Measurement. And as you can see, it'll bring up a window. You must select, even though it says, please select the settings that are manually adjustable on your display, just select them all. You're going to have to select them all, okay? And then make sure as much as possible that your reader thing is on there. And then hit next again on here. Then it's going to start to go through a series of colors, as you can see, lighter, darker, whatever the case may be, and it's doing a contrast test, and it suggests you should probably default reset your screen before you do this. So like factory reset your screen before you move on with these settings. And then it's going to have you start to adjust your brightness and things. Here's the first one, the RGB. Okay, now you're not going to be able to see it on my screen over here, but it'll probably show, okay, it shows that it's balanced, which is great because I've already done this before. You would have to go into your settings on your screen and find the RGB levels and move each level up and down. But if you're my Wacom over here, which is supposed to be already industry standard set for color and all that sort of amazing stuff, and you can't get it to work, which I couldn't, maybe because the screen was too old, or maybe it's faded, I don't know, then you're stuck. So if you're going to buy this, plan to already have a good quality screen. That's my first suggestion. Let's hit next, shall we? Once it tests that, now it's going to test for brightness. That's how much backlight and brightness you can have. But once again, it says adjust your brightness and contrast. Now it's saying it's too bright. So I would have to go into my settings and tell it to darken it. And it says that its target luminance is 140, and my measured balance is 159. So now I got to go into my settings, which is incredibly annoying. So menu, and I need to find picture, and brightness. No, brightness? Maybe it's brightness. I'm not even sure anymore. Because some screens will say brightness, and other ones will say other things. So let's come down to this and brightness. And I'll start turning down my brightness little bit by little bit. And the scanner will scan again and again until I get down dark enough so that it agrees with my color point. So it says I'm 138 of 140. Let me move it up, and it says 142. Now I'm too bright. So I've got to go down 1 and 138. Once I've done that, then I can exit the screen out of all those features, however to get out. There we go. And then you move on again. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. I mean, this is all fine if I had known this in the first place, but I had done it with the automatic should be able to do it itself features probably 3 or 4 times, becoming very frustrated with the final result. And as you can see, it's going to go through 118 color tones that this reader is hopefully reading correctly. And then by the time all is said and done, hopefully I'll have a calibrated screen. And then I will save the ICC profile so that I can utilize that on my screen settings. Now, in the same way as this is doing this, let's talk a little bit more about this. Let me see if I can switch back over to my main camera as we continue this discussion, and it continues to do its scan. Then you want to talk about the idea of trying to calibrate your printer. Now, I have a Canon Pro 100. It's a really great printer. It printed stuff like, hang on, let me get this over here. It prints all kinds of amazing stuff, and I have no idea how that happened. But it prints stuff like this, and I have no idea how Shift got these weird little spots because I didn't splash anything, I thought. But when it comes down to it, after I did all the calibrations and stuff, I printed this up, and it is very, very close to being like my screen. Very close, except in areas of redness. For instance, the hair in this design may look red to you on my cameras, but to me, it looks purplish brown, and that is not how it looks on my screens. There's 3 faults at play here. 1 can either be that the calibrator didn't do a good job on the screen, 2, the calibrator didn't do a good job on my printer, or 3, the printer ain't working right. But through this whole process of trying to figure this out, I printed about 30 or 40 of this. No joke, 30 or 40 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper of this guy, trying out different settings, setting the ICC profile in different ways, trying it through different programs. And there's so many different roads that lead to Rome. In the end, it's fidgety. So here's my final result. Do not expect magic when you purchase this thing. Because we work in graphic design, yes, you're probably going to have to get one, but don't expect magic to happen. Second, you're going to be investing a lot of your time trying to finagle this thing to work the best. And then you're going to try and write down the settings of how you made those settings to get that product that's as close to final as possible. I guess we can call it an evil necessity. That doesn't make it any more fun. I admit this made me incredibly frustrated when I was very excited to make a video to tell you guys how well it worked. In the aftermath, none of my screens really match. Even though I color calibrated each individual screen separately, some of them didn't have the capability to get as powerful a light as it was needed. Others just turned up just completely different and wrong when they looked like they did calibrate right. And I guess technically in the end, 2 of my screens did somewhat calibrate equally and look about the same, but my all-important Wacom Cintiq 21UX, which yes, is older, didn't. And in the end, I ended up having to draw a picture on that, take a copy of that same picture, put it on one of my calibrated screens, then after looking back and forth, manually adjusting the settings by eye to try and match the Wacom Cintiq as much as possible to my other screens without even using the calibrator. So don't buy the calibrator if you don't already have a expensive, good heavens. Don't buy the calibrator if you don't already have a good quality, obviously made for video and photo editing screen. And secondly, yeah, it will get colors to match a lot better between the screen and the printer, but it isn't going to be perfect. I'm sorry, there's no such thing as perfect. Because this also comes down to how well you care for your printer. It also comes down to the quality of inks that you've purchased, and also the paper that you use. And yes, even though you make an ICC profile for every single different piece of paper that you use, the consistencies could still be different. You sense my frustration here just a wee bit. Switching back here, it's finished scanning the profile and working all that out, and technically I am looking at my screen as a profiled screen right now. It immediately puts the settings up. So if I click on next, then I can save this profile, and it is the profile I've selected. And when it is working properly, it shows a picture of a young lady here, and you can see the before and after settings of how this worked or didn't work. Randomly, let's go ahead and just save this profile for giggles. It will take a few moments to save. And as you can see, now we have a before and after. And for the most part, the settings are accurate because the only thing that's really changing is my screen brightness after doing that calibration. So technically, my screen was already calibrated, and the only thing different was that brightness setting that we did and readjusted. Hopefully that means that it's calibrated correctly. But you will find yourself being slightly let down when you print something off of your printer and you hold it up next to your screen, and yes, most of it matches, but some of it still doesn't. Can I blame the calibrator for that? No, absolutely not. Screens might not be able to properly calibrate, the printer might not be able to properly calibrate, the inks might not even be able to get to the tones that the screens can. So the long story short is, you're going to spend a lot of money hoping that you're close. So here's the long story short. You are not going to be able to blame iStudio for anything it's doing wrong. For all I know, it's doing everything exactly right. But there are a lot of variables that come into play that you need to understand first. If you're a professional using professional equipment, you're going to get a lot better result than if you just went out and bought a cheap monitor from Walmart or Amazon. I also really feel that this whole law of diminishing returns is really coming into effect here. So this whole law of diminishing returns thing is, the more that you spend at a certain point in time, the less quality you're going to see. And I really feel that that's played the case here. And in the end, you're going to have to really kind of figure out your way around what works well, what doesn't work well, and you're just going to have to come up with a system that you stick with. And if you're like me and you're ADD, that's really hard to do. Am I saying that this is not worth the purchase? It is worth the purchase. But I gotta admit, if I knew that there was a cheaper version that could do both the printer and the screens, I would have gone for it. Because all of the gimmickiness that you're dealing with throughout all your different softwares and trying to get things to work and communicate together, in the end is not going to make this feel like a full product, even though technically it is. Probably this is the only industry standard thing I own right now. And though I really hate to use a really gross term, do not expect to polish a turd and make it not look like a turd. You need to invest in good professional equipment to get good professional results out of it. And even though I own a professional photo printing machine that's supposed to make beautiful prints, that professional printer is still on the cheaper end of what a good quality professional printer can do. So I can only assume the results are still not going to be as professional high quality as the i1Studio is able to work with. In the end, I still suggest you get one of these, though probably on the cheaper aspect of things, but I want to make you aware of what you're about to walk into. You're not going to hear angels singing. The trump of David is not going to surround you with success. will become incredibly frustrated, but you will get a lot closer to a positive result than you would if you were trying to do this without a calibrator. It's just my 2 cents on this video. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm kind of glad I got this one out of the way because I'm going to bend some rules up next here on my YouTube channel and try something a little different. I'm not going to tell you what, because I just kind of want you to hang on and let's see what happens together, shall we? If you have any thoughts, any previous experience, any knowledge that can help me better utilize this system, leave them down in the comments below. And if you watched this far, please consider subscribing, liking the video, leaving a comment, and being part of our little family of crazy hooligans who love technology. That's going to do it for this video. God bless you guys. I'll see you next time. Gotta admit, I kind of like how this profile looks. I'll save it and use it for a while and see if it sticks.